2025. Thanks to all those that came over onto PrepperNow. Please go and check that video out. It's called Dumb Stories. Covered a lot of dumb stories. Things that just make you scratch your head and you're like, why? Just why? So, get a lot of good people over there. Really appreciate everybody. They know what's going on. Good to see the Hudson Valley is back in the good graces, and they have lifted their erroneous stop of his channel. So, yep, they need to chill the old algorithm out a little bit. It's a little too hardcore. They got it set to kill on a lot of these great channels, and it's just, I don't know, it's too much. But they won't change anything. They'll just keep doing what they do. It is what it is. So, whatever. We'll keep doing what we're doing. So, first and foremost, read the top up here. Okay. See that? See, here we push the limit. And if we push the limit, well, let's just say someone's got a burner phone. Well, let's just say as a prepper, it's redundancy, or at least backups to backups. So anything terrible will ever happen over here or at PrepperNow, which they're going after me. Clearly, we're doing something right. Then you know where to go. Okay, cool. All right, it's kind of late. I'm going to get started on this. This one is called Trouble Brewing in India because it is. There's problems. India and Pakistan are at odds with each other, and there's a lot of moves that are kind of consistent before a little bit of a military action. Now, let's hope that the military action is more towards the terror kind of thing and not towards the whole country of Pakistan. So the hope is that they're going to go after like the little cells that are up there and that are doing their awful things to people, and not the country itself. Because the two countries get into it, as we covered last night, and tonight we will. They are nuclear capable. And that could be a problem. So let's hope the cooler heads prevail. I know India's pissed off, so. But we're going to cover it all. At the end, I got a whole section on what's going on right now with the two countries. But let's get started here on your crisis report for April 23rd, 2025. Ooh, what's that? Poland doubled defense spending, but PGZ still lags, despite Poland doubling its defense budget to 4.7% of GDP in 2025. Much of the money has gone to foreign suppliers as state-owned defense giant PGZ fails to expand production quickly enough to meet demand. Efforts to boost production of 155mm NATO standard artillery shells have been delayed repeatedly, with original targets, 150,000 shells a year by 2025, now pushed back to 2028. Flagship projects like Project 44.7 and Project 400 stalled due to changing plans and failure to build required facilities, gunpowder shortages, delays in expanding production of PGZ's MESCO unit remained unresolved. PGZ, a conglomerate of 50 companies, struggles with outdated infrastructure, staffing shortages, and project mismanagement. Does not sound good. Over on PrepperNow, we're talking about China and all the things they control. We're talking about their pharmaceuticals, and we're also talking about how they control rare earths and magnets, and these are very instrumental for defense industry stuff. So, Trump eyes tariffs on semiconductors, but they could backfire. U.S. imports $30 billion in chips yearly, mostly from Taiwan and South Korea, not easily replaceable. Risks: tariffs on chips or components may raise electronics prices and push more manufacturing offshore. Some officials seek self-sufficiency, but that could undermine U.S. competitiveness. Experts urge targeted action on China's chip subsidies and a global deal instead. Tariff scenarios. Direct chip tariffs, unlikely to stop imports, may lead to firms offshore full production lines. Component tariffs would target foreign-made chips inside consumer electronics, like iPhones. Wednesday, stock market rallied Asia following Trump's comments about the Federal Reserve and China. Market reaction, Asia-Pac stocks surged. Japan's Nikkei plus 2.3. Kospi 1.2 up. MSCI Asia-Pac 0.3 up. U.S. futures rose sharply, up 1.8. NASDAQ up 2. I think it's up 400 points, something like that, for the Dow. Dutch spies warn Russian attacks on Europe included bid to sway EU election. Russia is stepping up its hybrid attacks against the Netherlands and its European allies to influence and weaken their societies, the Dutch military intelligence agency MIVD has said. Trump's final offer for Ukraine-Russian peace, what Russia gets under Trump's plan. It gets de jure recognition of Crimea as Russian territory, de facto recognition over parts of Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, and Zaporozhye, pledge that Ukraine won't join NATO, sanctions imposed since 2014 lifted, U.S.-Russia cooperation in energy and industry, what Ukraine gets, security guarantees from a coalition of countries, excluding the United States, Russia troop withdrawal from parts of Kharkiv, free navigation along the Dnieper River, reconstruction aid and compensation. Zaporozhye nuclear power plant remains Ukrainian by law, managed by the U.S. Energy shared with Ukraine and Russia. Now, what could go wrong with all that? Well, Zelensky said no. So they're going back to punctuate things. The Russians decide to bomb the ever-loving crap out of Kiev today. So we'll see. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. The Russians will never give up Crimea. They won't, as we explained last night. Russian bathtub, subport, all that. Warm port. So I don't know what Zelensky is thinking. He's not going to win. This is as good as it gets. And from here, I think the Russians are going to really start to drop the hammer. Planned high-level talks in London downgraded after Ukraine's rejected a U.S. proposal that included Whoa, bro. That was weird. Sorry. Proposal that included recognizing Russia's annexation of Crimea. UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio withdrew, only senior officials attending. President Zelensky dismissed the plan, viewing it as a threat to Ukraine's territorial integrity. Bush. European Union has reaffirmed that China's strategy remains focused on de-risking rather than full decoupling, despite pressure from Trump. British and French officials are reportedly open to a peace deal where Ukraine accepts the loss of some Russian-held territory in exchange for security guarantees and economic aid. Both nations favor a de facto recognition of these areas, similar to the Korean War armistice, rather than formal acknowledgement, according to Wall Street Journal. United States Vice President J.D. Vance says we will withdraw from mediating between Russia and Ukraine if we do not receive a positive response. We have presented a clear and fair proposal to both Russians and Ukrainians. We out. EU staunchly opposes Russia's demand of lifting sanctions before talks conclude. UK Foreign Office says ministerial talks in London on Ukraine-Russia peace postponed, now taking place at a lower level. Iranian Foreign Ministry says the new U.S. sanctions are illegal, contradict U.S. claims of dialogue and negotiation, and reveal a lack of seriousness. Russia's foreign intelligence chief says there are always chances when asked if there's a deal between Russia and the U.S. if possible. Joint statement by the foreign ministers of Germany, France, Britain on Gaza said aid should never be used as a political tool. Israel is legally obligated to allow unhindered access to aid. There was a huge 6.2 magnitude earthquake struck Istanbul, Turkey. According to the data of Disaster and Emergency Management Presidency of Turkey, Istanbul was shaken by 3 earthquakes in 40 minutes, strongest of which was a 6.2. Aftershocks keep going. I think there was over 50. Chinese Foreign Ministry says we don't want a trade war, but we're not afraid of one. If we talk, the door is open. EU has fined Apple 500 million euros and Meta 200 million euros for violating new antitrust rules. White House is considering cutting tariffs on China to ease tensions in the ongoing trade war. One senior White House official told Wall Street Journal that the China tariffs were likely to come down to between roughly 50% and 65%. China's Foreign Ministry, Wang Yi, says U.S. has abused tariffs, losing global support and isolating itself. International community must stand more united than ever to uphold multilateralism. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent says more than 100 countries have come to the table in response to the tariffs. U.S. Defense Minister Pete Hegseth says the U.S. no longer can be the guarantor of Europe's security. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said China is carrying out the largest military buildup in history. Fastest, most extensive peacetime military expansion the world has ever seen, not just in modern times, but all of human history. I don't know. The Meiji Restoration was pretty darn tough, too. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says if the U.S.-led talks fail, Ukraine could end up in a more awkward position in the future and receive harsher peace terms from Russia. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says we are trying to prevent a war with China. A war against China would be a terrible thing. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said there is no military end to this war. We have to be frank. Russia's not just going to roll over Ukraine and take the whole country, and Ukraine's not going to push them all the way back to where they were before 2014. That is correct. What I would say is we're involved in understanding what the Russian position is. We have a better understanding of that now because we're actually spoken to them after 3 years of not speaking to them. U.S. Secretary of State Rubio on NATO says NATO is good as long as NATO is a real defense alliance, not the United States and a bunch of junior partners that aren't doing their fair share. That is correct. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent says we are very close to tariff deal with India. India has given diplomats at the Pakistani High Commission office in New Delhi 1 week to leave the country. India has withdrawn all diplomatic staff from High Commission office in Islamabad. Bad. News. U.S. Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent. China needs to change. Country knows it needs to change. Everyone knows it needs to change, and we want to help it change because we need rebalancing too. India reportedly ordered all Pakistani nationals to leave the country within 48 hours. That is big. Dutch Speaker of the House of Representatives Martin Bosma suggests annexing Flanders and ending Belgium. Netherlands want Flanders to join them. Wallonia can go to France. Interesting. I'll be there in about a month. U.S. airstrikes targeted Sa'ada Governorate, Yemen. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says, I pledge to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. If we lose the battle against Iran, Western countries will be next. No country will stop us from holding Iran accountable, and if necessary, we will stand alone. Google Maps starts to call, in parenthesis, the Persian Gulf the Arabian Gulf, likely a bidding of Gulf Arabian monarchies. That could be bad. Over the past hour, Russian Federation strategic forces started to carry a missile strike against Ukraine and its capital, Kiev. On video shared on social media, multiple short-range ballistic missiles and interceptions seen tonight from the Ukrainian capital of Kiev. According to open data, between 7 and 8 missiles reportedly have struck areas across the city. Several fires and large damage are reported on the Ukrainian capital. Sirens continue to sound with additional Russian missiles and Russian self-harm drones still inbound or inside of the Ukrainian airspace following the start of the strikes. Pro-Houthi media reports that United States Air Force is conducting airstrikes in Marib, Sana'a, and Sa'ada in northern and central Yemen against terrorist sites. Ukraine refuses to recognize Crimea as Russian. Marco Rubio breaks off talks with Ukraine. Washington is outraged that Kiev refuses to recognize Crimea as Russian, writes the Washington Post. Newspaper reports that the U.S. diplomats have withdrawn from the talks in London in protest of this position, with Marco Rubio reportedly already on his way to the talks when he canceled them. Putin, on the other hand, offered to stop the war with borders on the current front, Financial Times has reported. Trump is going to cut off tariffs on China on between 50 and 65%. EU and China close to a major deal to lift sanctions, according to South China Morning Post. European Parliament is in final stages in discussions with China about removing sanctions on its members, smoothing the way for normalized relations with the bloc. There you go, a couple of communists, baby. U.S. Democrat Senator John Fetterman is advocating for President Trump to stop Iran's peace talks and instead follow Israel's plan to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. United Kingdom government is expected to grant approval within weeks to begin dimming sunlight as a strategy to combat global warming. Turkey's parliament has issued a warning to citizens to prepare for a major earthquake and has instructed all government or agencies to stay alert and ready for the worst-case scenario. That's called prepping. President Trump is suing Perkins Coie, the law firm hired by the DNC that played a key role in creating the Russiagate narrative, Christopher Steele dossier, and interfering in the 2016 election. The United States is considering taking the Rona-Gibity off the CDC recommended immunization schedule for the children's. Trump, well, he's preparing an executive order that would threaten to pull federal funding from colleges that don't disclose their sources of foreign funding. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has referred intelligence officials to the DOJ for prosecution over the leaking of classified information. Excuse me. Mark Zuckerberg exposed is actively working with the Communist government of China to censor the U.S. on their behalf. Well, gosh, I'm sure China's not doing that with any other big tech groups out there. For a murderous regime in China, Mark Zuckerberg is here with his team of engineers actively working to make Facebook censor on their behalf. Thanks a lot, Mark, you dick. Casualty count in Russia's large-scale attack on Kiev has grown to 54 injured victims, including 6 children. Always got to name the children. 2 people have also been confirmed to have been killed in the attack. Additional explosions were also reported at 4 a.m. local time, according to a Kiev independent journalist on the ground. Pakistan Prime Minister has conveyed the meeting of the National Security Committee on Thursday morning, 24th of April, 2025, to respond to the Indian government's statement of this evening, Foreign Minister has said. Elon Musk's Neuralink said to eye funding at $8.5 billion valuation according to the Bloomberg. Almost 20,000 people have viewed Pope so far Wednesday, according to the Vatican. U.S. Army intelligence analyst sentenced to 7 years imprisonment for providing sensitive defense information to China, including documents about U.S. weapon systems and military tactics and strategy. My God. China really likes to know what we're doing. But they're just so great. So good. Man, we need to get all of our cheap crap from China, folks. Group of protesters is planning to set up tent encampments on Columbia University's campuses this week in protest of the war in Gaza. I'm sure that's going to go great. President Trump is holding a rally in Michigan to celebrate his first 100 days in office. Prominent Gazan claims hundreds of Gazans left today through Ramon Airport for France and other countries. They came out as part of the France's program for academics at risk. All right. Maximum alert has now been declared from the Pakistani army. Iran is reinforcing 2 underground tunnel complexes tied to its main nuclear site, possibly preparing them for use of nuclear facilities, according to satellite images reviewed by the Institute for Science and International Security. The move comes as Iran and the U.S. prepare for a third round of nuclear talks. IAEA has been denied access to the tunnels, raising fears they could store enriched uranium or advanced centrifuges. U.S. and Israeli officials have warned of potential strikes if no deal is reached. Iran claims the activity is for peaceful purposes and rejects IAEA oversight of the new sites. India versus Pakistan. Pakistan Defense Minister Khwaja Asif. This is all Pakistan-India stuff. He says that Pakistan had no role to play in the Pahalgam attacks, which took place yesterday in India. Mea culpa. I didn't do it. Pakistan sends its condolences to all those killed in the Pahalgam attack in India. Plans have already been drawn up for a prolonged operation against Pakistani terror outfits inside as well as outside the country, according to sources. Retaliation is said to be broadly extensive this time as compared to the past retaliations. All 3 branches of the Indian Armed Forces have been placed on heightened state of alert. Orders given from the Defense Ministry, according to Indian news media. Have been monitoring the airspaces. This is Aquila. His analysis and what he thinks going on. I've been monitoring the airspaces in both India and Pakistan for these past 24 hours. And yes, one thing is clear, there will be a retaliation by India. There has been heavy reconnaissance on the LOC, or the line of control, and IB by India and Pakistan in the past few hours. There's also been GPS satellite interference in northern and western India, including eastern and northern Pakistan. Very likely during this time, SIG-INT and ELINT supported aircrafts were scanning through. There's been movement of Indian aerial assets, which include AWACS and refuelers. Also, if I'm not wrong, mock raids by Indian jets were carried out. There is another interesting movement which is included ballistics. I won't get into it just now, but we'll be soon seeing some signs. According to what I've seen and noted, I am now confident that some sort of military action will be taking place within the next 72 hours. Also, we could be seeing a slew of diplomatic movement before any military action, which could conclude the pulling out of diplomatic staff from Pakistan. There are various countries already mediating between India and Pakistan, including the U.S. India mulls on downgrading diplomatic ties with Pakistan in the aftermath of the Pahalgam terror attack, among other options, according to Indian news agencies. Pakistani military officials in India have to leave India by May 1st. They're not messing around. India will be withdrawing its own defense, navy, and air advisors from the Indian High Commission in Islamabad. These posts in the respective high commissions are deemed annulled. Pakistani armed forces are ready to thwart any misadventure carried out by India, Dawn citing its military sources. Pakistani government has just summoned a high-level national security meeting for tomorrow to decide on options in response to India. Pakistani security cabinet meeting will take place today, as they are already in the next day at 11 a.m. at the PM's residency. Pakistan locals are fearful about a ceasefire violation at the LOC, which can happen without any warning, Pakistan local news channels have reported. Pakistan will respond appropriately to any installation which will stop the flow of water to Pakistan official to Pakistani media. Respond appropriately to installation where they will stop the flow of the water to Pakistan. What's the big thing that India did today? They stopped the flow. So it's going to make for an interesting thing. So, anyway. Yep, shit hitting to fix the fan. Yep, that's right. So, friends, we're going to cut it off right there. That is your crisis report. Please consider becoming a member like Devil Dog Prepper and Water Tiger and Bad Bobber and Howard Clegg. Thank you all. You can join us on the other medias like Twitter, X, Minds, Gab, Truth Social. And we would love to have you there. Subscribe, Star and Locals as well. A few dollars a month. Put stuff out all the time. Put a bunch of videos out today. So, consider it. Other than that, folks, y'all rock. Thanks so much. Go check out those PrepperNow videos. They're probably getting crap hammered at them by Bull Borgarino, but whatever. And keep fighting a good fight. God bless. PrepperNow out. Crisis report out.